I haven't got all day. Victory for Sylvanas!
What would you ask of death?
What is it? Goodbye. What now?
was developing this four-wheel drive vehicle for the German military, and they had a bit of a thought. They wondered if its four-wheel drive system could be made to work in an ordinary family car. And so, under the cover of darkness at a quarry in a remote corner of Germany, they began secret tests. And straight away, it was obvious that with all four wheels being driven, the family car had an enormous amount of grip. This meant it could go round corners on loose surfaces like that much faster. And that, they reckoned, would make it good at rallying. But there was a problem. What I've got here is the 1979 Motor Racing Rulebook. It's the most boring book in the world, but whatever. Here on page 8 million, Article 2 says that in rallying, four-wheel drive cars will not be admitted. Audi, however, had thought about that and dispatched a man to Paris to a meeting of the sport's governing body to try and get the rule changed. He was very clever because he waited for the meeting to be finished, everyone pulling on their hats and coats, and then he went, oh God, sorry, one more thing. This rule about four-wheel drive being banned in rallying, is it okay if we get rid of that? And everyone said, well, obviously he wants to enter his silly little army lorry and something or other. So they all went, yes, yes, whatever, and went home. 3 years later, this is what happened.
The four-wheel drive Quattro is all-conquering, and the Audi has been proved master of all conditions.
Superior power and traction with a turbocharged four-wheel drive Audi is too much. Bjorn Valdegaard has wasted no time in proving the dominance of the four-wheel drive Quattro. Hanno Mikkola has scored a tremendous victory.
The Quattros hold all the aces, first, second and third.
Audi won the World Championship in 1982 with this very car, actually, and from that moment on, everyone knew that to win in rallying, you had to have four-wheel drive. Well, when I say everyone, this was Lancia's answer to the Quattro, the two-wheel drive 037. I've got a bit of a soft spot for all old Lancias, but in this, it's not soft. This is everything I was expecting it to be. Pots, bands, lumpy petrol. A dashboard dominated by this enormous and very well-used ashtray. Completely Italian. Honestly, it is dainty as a dandelion seed caught in a summer breeze and as agile as a water boatman. I mean, that was just glorious through there. Glorious. Feels highly strung, feels like a thoroughbred. It's fast as well. Oh, wow, what a thing this is. On a dry track then, or in a beauty contest, the 037 would thrash the Quattro any day of the week. But in the rough and tumble crash bang wallop world of rallying, not a chance. What's more, Audi was backed by the industrial might of Volkswagen. It was efficient and organised. This was the team boss, Roland Gumpert. And look at him, a hands-on, bearded, German doctor of engineering. Lancia's team boss, meanwhile, well, he was a bit different. His name was Cesare Fiorio, and he liked girls and powerboat racing. Also, he was running a team staffed by Italians. on a shoestring. And then there were the drivers. Audi had Hannu Mikkola and Stig Blomqvist and Michel Mouton,
En bas, que je vois rien, en bas.
who had won 21 rallies between them.
Quattro was the car. Everybody's lips, you know, in rally business. And of course we were developing the car all the time. It was getting better and better. We were well funded, you know, and that time it was a big team.
Lancia, meanwhile, had Marco Alain and Walter Röhrl, who was brilliant, but said he didn't want to compete in every event and didn't want to be world champion.
I told them, listen, I want to win Monte Carlo. I like Corsica, I like Acropoli, I like New Zealand, I like San Remo. I only do these 5 or 6 beautiful rallies and nothing more. I am not interested to win anymore the World Championship title. I want to be a normal man, not something special. And if we're always in the newspaper and everywhere, of course you're never alone because people standing in front of a house and I don't like.
So, Audi had 4-wheel drive, a proven car, a team staffed by Germans, a hands-on boss, and a squad of world-class drivers who were motivated and on it. Lancia, meanwhile, had a budget of £3.75, 2-wheel drive, a powerboating playboy at the helm, and a part-time driver who didn't want to be world champion. However, Lancia did have one ace up its sleeve. They'd been in rallying for ages. They'd won the championship 4 times with cars like the Fulvia and then the Stratos. So although their powerboating team boss looked like a playboy, he knew all the tricks. For example, the rules said that before you could enter a car in a rally, you had to build at least 400 examples which could be sold as road cars to customers. Now, obviously, when officials from the sports governing body turn up to check you've done that, they are going to notice if you've only made 200. So you say yes. But you see, this car park was full. So the other 200 are in a car park on the other side of town. And then you say, let's go and count those now. And on the way, why don't we stop off for a spot of lunch? You then make sure that lunch goes on for a very long time. You have a start, a main course. Turn it into candles for 3 days, got it. Pudding, cheese. Well, when I say reverse, career backwards. Mince, more cheese. Shame to waste the bottle. And then afterwards, you take them to another car park, which contains, miraculously, the other 200 cars. Then, you had the cars themselves. The rules say they must be fitted with roll cages. But roll cages are heavy, they'll slow you down. So why not use something like this instead? It looks like a roll cage, it would pass a visual inspection every day of the week, but actually, it's made from cardboard. Look. I'm not saying Lancia actually did that. But if you examine these crashed O37s, you can see they weren't exactly strong.
My family and my friends around me said, why you signed for Lancia? This car is so dangerous. If you see these thin tubes and these plastic things, if you went off, then it's maybe the last accident you have. And I answer, listen, I am not planning to have an accident.
However, despite Lancia's experience and Gisari's cunning, no one expected them to do well in the first round of the 1983 championship, which was held in the freezing mountains above Monte Carlo.
We were very much afraid about this rally because you can find a lot of snow, ice, slippery conditions, where, of course, a mid-engine car with real wheel traction is not the best idea.
So, whilst Audi prepared for the event by fettling its cars, Lancia got ready by going to the supermarket. Here they bought all the salt they could lay their hands on. They then sprinkled this on the difficult corners so that by the time their car came along, the ice was gone. And they weren't finished there.
We have been also pushing local authorities taking care of the French roads, saying, oh, there's a lot of ice on that road. It's very dangerous for spectators and for the drivers with all this ice. Oh, yes. And so they went and they cleaned up the road. That was
They also had another trick up their sleeve. After the icy stages were over, the Lancia stopped in the middle of the stage, so the winter tyres could be changed. Now, there was nothing in the rules that said you could do this, but critically, there was nothing that said you couldn't.
If you want to compete in motorsport, you must know the rules you have to face, the grey zones of the rules. And it's always a big fight, but you must try to be a bit clever.
The result in Monte Carlo, then, was the exact opposite of what everyone had been expecting.
Four-wheel drive and 340 turbocharged horsepower are just not enough. It's Audi sadness, Lancia joy.
The two-wheel drive Lancias on a rally famed for its slippery conditions finished first and second. For the next event of the year, in Sweden, there wasn't enough salt in the world to get rid of all the snow and ice. So Lancia solved the problem by simply not turning up at all. Audi therefore scored a 1-2 here. And 3 weeks later, they did the same thing again in Portugal. And after more successes in East Africa, it looked like Audi were running away with it. But then the whole circus moved to Corsica, where almost all of the stages are held on dry, smooth tarmac. Everyone expected the nimble two-wheel drive Lancias to pick up a load of points here. But nobody could have predicted how many they were going to pick up. Usually, Lancia turned up at an event with 2 or 3 cars, but here they arrived with 4, which meant that if they ran faultlessly, which they did, the best Audi could hope for was 5th. And thanks to mechanical failures, they didn't even get that.
With our speed, it's just like holiday.
So, Lancia, with its salt and its tyre-changing antics and its flexible approach to how many cars were in the team, was back on top of the leaderboard. But then, the whole circus moved to the roughest and toughest event on the European calendar. Greece. Here, everyone knew the rough roads would cause mechanical issues. There would be breakdowns, and there were. But amazingly, they were all Audis.
For Lancia, it's an impressive victory. Rawl has again driven superbly.
And I won Acropoli in a Lancia. That was a result I never expected. That we even can come to the finish, because I was thinking maybe the Lancia is too light to stay in one piece for Greece.
The year wore on, with both teams always in contention for the championship. But then, it was time for everyone to head for the bumpy hell of Finland, and Lancia had a problem. Walter Rawl refused to go.
I didn't like to go to Finland because I don't like jumps. Because, you know, if I want to fly, I would be a pilot and not sitting in a car. That's no way.
Because of his no-show, Audi won. 3 rounds left, it was mathematically possible for Lancia to win the World Championship in San Remo. And that's something they really wanted to do because San Remo, well, that's Italy. They'd be winning it in front of their home crowd. To do that, they'd have to deal with the main feature of the San Remo rally: dust. It's thrown up by a car, and a minute later when the next one comes along, it's still there, which makes seeing where you're going a bit tricky. To try and make everything better, they fitted a team van with brushes and sent it up the course. But this didn't really work, so the drivers came up with a cunning alternative. On one stage, a minute after the German car had set off and the Lancia was supposed to go, it didn't move. So the starter went over to see what was wrong.
I'm really sorry, my belt, I don't know how it's happened, it's come undone. I know, I should have done this before we came to the start line. It's my bad, really. Oh, no, they've all come undone. I feel like such an idiot. I just need to...
By the time the problem had been solved, the dust, luckily, had all gone.
Right, we're good to go now. Oh, no, the door. Oh, there it is.
Annoyingly, the officials quickly put a stop to this pothole. So, if Lancia was going to win here, on gravel, it would all be down to the skill of the driver. And boy, did Walter Rall rise to the occasion.
Looking back in my career, it was maybe the best rally in my life I have done. It was just like a dream. When I was just thinking, I want to cut this corner, don't lose 10 centimeters of road. The car was going exactly on this point, and it was flowing. It was just... nobody can beat me.
And then there was the magnificent 037 itself.
Driving a Lancia, it's a perfect thing, because it's doing exactly what you want. It's like my shoe. It fits so perfectly. If I just think it should do this one, it has done it.
With man and machine in such perfect harmony, Rall won a staggering 33 of the 58 stages. The team scored a 1-2-3, and as a result, they won the World Championship. David had beaten the four-wheel drive Goliath, and no two-wheel drive car would ever do that again.
Yeah, definitely. I was one. Great story. Really good story.
What? I'm just wondering though, did a Lancia driver win the Drivers' World Championship that year?
Well, no, because Walter Rall didn't want to.
No, the other bloke.
No, Marco Allen. Mathematically, he could have won the Drivers' Championship, but after they won the Constructors' Championship in San Remo there, Lancia then didn't bother going to the last two events. He just didn't go, so he couldn't win.
That must be pretty frustrating if you're a professional racer.
It would be the same as Mercedes Formula One team winning the Constructors' Championship last year in Texas and then say, we're not going to go to the last three races. There's got Lewis Hamilton going, but I got that there. Well, I'm sorry, we won, and that's all we're bothered about.
But I tell you what makes me sad is that the way that Lancia has pretty much vanished.
So I know, Audi is now enormous, and Lancia struggled up to the point where it only makes one pretty terrible car, if we're honest. It only sells it in Italy. It is, it's heartbreaking. And on that terrible disappointment, and for once it really is a terrible disappointment, it's time to end. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye. Thank you. Welcome, and in this show, apart from James's weird jacket and T-shirt combinations...
Nothing to be proud of, mate.
No, it isn't. We have many other things besides. James May changes gear. Richard Hammond changes gear.
And you are...
And I... change gear. It's all very exciting. But we started in the 1950s when James May was an old man. Now, back then, Jaguar won Le Mans 3 times with the D-Type. And after they retired that from racing, they decided to build 25 road-going versions of it, which they called the XKSS. Got a photograph of one here. Now, this was aimed at wealthy young gentlemen who wanted to spend the week dashing around town and then the weekend doing motor racing. Steve McQueen had one, and I think that says it all.
Unfortunately, in 1957, there was a huge fire at the factory, and 9 of those 25 cars were never made. Until now. Let me make one thing plain right from the start. This is not a replica XKSS built from plastic. This is an XKSS. Built by Jaguar themselves over 10,000 painstaking hours. It's the real deal. In fact, it's as real as the real ones from way back when. The chassis is made from a special steel called Reynolds 531. It's what they originally used to build the World War II Stormtrooper, and it's light, only weighs 39 kilograms. And then there's the body. The tooling and the technical drawings were all destroyed in the fire, so they had to scan an original from 1957 and then work backwards from that to make it in incredible detail, right down to the rivets. Every one, the number and the position is as it was. And there's over 2,000 of them. But it was the engine that was the trickiest bit. The plans for that weren't destroyed in the fire, but I've got a copy of them here. But there was a page missing. So they had to get an original engine and saw it in half to find out how it worked. No one has ever made a car like this before. It's a world first. So it's small wonder it's priced at just over £1 million.
Or, for £500,000 more, you can have one of these. It's an Aston Martin DB4 GT lightweight. And back in the late 50s, it was the fastest car in the world. Flat out, it would do 151 miles an hour.
I'm listening.
But this is not from the late 50s. Despite what you might think when you look at its period dashboard and its period 6-cylinder twin-spark engine, it was actually built a few weeks ago. So, like Hammond's Jag, it's an old car that's brand spanking new.
So, did these two ever race against each other in period?
No, they did. They did. May 1960. I was a month old.
I was 10 years off being born, mate.
Yeah, whatever. Picture of it here, look.
Oh, look, there they are.
Well, it's actually a D-Type.
Yeah, but it is race version.
Yeah, exactly. DB4 GT lightweight. I mean, that was proper racing in those days. No school cars every time there was a run. They just finished the race, have a drink, and then some sex. We should give it a bash. Happily, we were in the French town of Po, and it was here in 1901 the first ever Grand Prix was staged. They were closing roads for races here long before they thought of doing the same thing in Monaco or Detroit. And today, they were closed once more. For us.
Closed roads through the centre of Po. Oh.
Oh my God, this is like being in history.
This may have the same Italian styling as the original, but unlike Hammond's Jag, it is not a faithful replica. It has, for example, a bigger engine than the original, which means 40 more brake horsepower. This thing is quick. Whoa, really quick. Some things are the same though. Windows don't wind down, there's no fan or air conditioning of any kind, and it's got a racing gearbox. That means no synchros. Which means that when you want to slow down, you have to heel and toe. Like that. Yes! That was a skill I never thought I'd need to use again. But like changing a typewriter ribbon. Whoa, that was me not matching the revs up. And that was it, not forgiving me. The really good news though is the brakes. They're made using modern materials, unlike in Hammond's Jag.
Yep, in here it's just me and my big hairy balls. And they need to be big. I can only brake when I'm accelerating, seriously. The power for the brakes comes off the gearbox, so with the clutch in, there isn't any. Who thought that was a good idea? Right, time to unleash the 3.4-litre straight six. That's 262 brake horsepower bouncing off the walls. In the 50s, Ferraris were hitting 160 on the Mulsanne straight. Jaguar D-types were hitting 172. And remember, this is essentially a D-type.
Whoa! Just feel the lack of grip. Of course, back in the 50s, cars didn't grip because they had cross-ply tyres. Back then, it was all about how a car handled, and this thing handles absolutely beautifully. Come on, Hammond, get out of my way!
This really is a special moment. Just to see these two cars racing around here is incredible. Being one of them is unreal.
This is one of the best mornings I've ever had behind the wheel of a car, ever. And it's just brilliant fun.
Eventually, though, the people of Po wanted their town back. So Hammond and I called time on the fun and games and sat down for a natter about our amazing cars. Now, we should explain why Aston Martin and Jaguar have suddenly decided to start making cars from their back catalogue. And really, it's second-hand values, isn't it?
But basically, yeah. I mean, the last genuine original XKSS to sell went for over £12 million.
Was it really 12 million?
12 million.
So anyone who buys that for £1 million is getting the bargain of the century.
Yep.
And Jaguar's making more profit on that than it would from selling
100 XEs.
Exactly. I wouldn't be at all surprised if other car makers don't start doing this. Ferrari, Maserati, Lamborghini. If Lancia remade the Fulvia now...
No, I'd rather have that than one of those.
Is that the new Honda Civic type?
The new one, and it is hideous.
It is, honestly.
It's worse than the last one.
I mean, the original 90s Civic Type was brilliant, but that is disgusting. It's revolting, is what it is. Mind you, it's not as revolting as what's just got out of it.
Oh, God.
Why are you here?
I'm here because I heard that you two were talking complete rubbish. You don't buy an old black and white television set. You don't buy a Bakelite telephone. Why would you buy an old car?
Because they're stylish.
No, new stuff is better than old stuff. I've explained this to you before. The world now is better than it was just 1 minute ago.
No, it isn't, because a minute ago you weren't here.
Yeah, that's true, and neither was that thing, and I do hate it.
It is. That's one of the most revolting cars I've ever seen.
You see, that's amazing. You're both talking rubbish again. To prove it, I suggested we take our cars for a simple evening drive.
Go get my leg in.
Right. Here I go. Oh, that's backwards. No, I don't want backwards.
It's neutral, so...
There, first. No, that's still... Oh.
What are they doing?
Struggling a bit here.
That's pulling away is in a sense. Ooh! Oh!
That was a gear, I think.
Finally, the golden age of motoring duo were on the move, but not at what you'd call a hell of a lick. It's like driving around behind the National Trust. I wouldn't be surprised to find there's a souvenir shop in Hammond's car. You have to go through it as you get out. Why are we going so slowly?
Well, I want to savour the car and the weather and the journey. I don't want to rush this one. I want to go slowly.
Exactly, we want to make it last.
Exactly. I should admit, the real reason we're driving slowly is because this part of the French motorway network is very heavily policed. Hammond and I know this to our cost. A couple of years ago, we were driving along here and I was in an Aston Martin then. Got busted by the constabulary, who helped themselves to all of our money and took our driving licences away on the spot. We were left stranded at the side of the road, could have been raped or murdered. Gives me an idea. James May, I'd love to see how fast your car could go along here.
Yeah, let's see what that thing can do. Come on.
I want you to unleash, how many horsepower is it? 320? Unleash the lot, James.
Right, yeah, I'll come past like a blooded samurai. Watch this.
Oh, yes. He's buying it.
Having dropped back, I then showed them what this car can do.
Here he comes, ladies and gentlemen of the police force. Oh, wow!
Goodbye, Heritage Britain.
I reckon it's got more to give.
Oh, James, go! Keep your foot in it, man! At the speed he's now travelling, by nightfall he'll be in a cell with Pierre le Burglar. Annoyingly, though, when we arrived at the overnight hotel... God's sake. It turned out he'd got away with his recklessness.
You look good.
My car's got no locks. I can't leave it unattended.
You've got to bet the police are more bothered around here with speeding than they are with crime.
Exactly.
You've got no door locks.
No.
God, you're completely screwed. I didn't get to grips with the gear changing in the end. I did need a shower after that day when I got to my hotel room, I'll tell you.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. Because I spent all day sharing a small metal box with a 4.2-litre radiator in the south of France in the summer. Honestly, my butt cracked.
Don't talk about your butt crack now, please.
What?
Don't
I'm just
talk
saying it was
about
like
that.
the Colorado River down there. But
We'll come back to that later. Not that.
we are actually coming back to that later. He's sweating like a pig.
But there are other things in there too. But right now it is time to ring the doorbell of debate on the House of Chat, located on Conversation Street.
What conversation shall we have? Oh, I know. Do you remember a while back we were asked to vote on the name of that new, very serious Antarctic research special? We all decided we wanted to call it Boating McBoatface.
Yes.
Remember that? Okay, the authorities were very angry with us. And they said, I thought actually, that we'd never be consulted again because the public can't be trusted to be sensible. Well, news from my hometown, Doncaster. Okay? Anyone from Doncaster? You're actually from Doncaster? You'll like this. It's actually news from Doncaster, okay? The council has decided to risk it, okay? And they asked the people of Doncaster to vote on a name for it. There are two new sort of snowplough road gritter things, yes? Okay? Would you like to hear some of the suggestions people have come up with?
Yes, please, Jeremy, we would.
Here we go. Grit Van Dyke. True Grit. Rule Britannia.
I like that.
Salt Disney.
That's what they've done.
These are the names they've chosen, okay? One of them is going to be called Gritsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Anti-Slip Machine. The other one, though, is going to be called David Plowy.
That doesn't work.
Well, I think they were hoping we'd think it was David Plowy, but it isn't. It's David Plowy. It doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, as in slow. No.
Well, that would work in Birmingham.
I'll get the snout plow out. No, we want to David Plowy, then. The marvellous thing is the council said this vote cheered up Britain.
Well, that cheered me up.
And a member of the council said it's got people interested in gritting.
Well, it just hasn't.
No, it hasn't. We would be interested in gritting, though, if we'd thought of a name.
Yeah, well, we'd just call it Gary Gritter, wouldn't we? Let's be honest.
Or maybe Ice-ish. That could work.
Yeah. Gary Gritter or Ice-ish. Do we think those are better names? Oh, hang on. Adolf Grittler.
Perfect. Those are better
That's
names.
a good one.
We like that. Yeah, that works. That's good.
Which shall we have? Shall we go with Itsy Bitsy and the other one, or our names? Who wants our names? Hands up. Hands up. That was a vote, Doncaster.
Yep.
It's just what it's going to have to be.
Gary and Adolf the Gritters.
It was Right, the organisers of the Formula E motor racing series, which is like Formula One for electric cars, they've recently staged a race between one of their cars and a cheetah. Now, we've got a shot from the video they took of it here. Now, let me ask you two a question, right? The cheetah's top speed is 70 miles an hour. The car's top speed is 140 miles an hour. So which one do you think won?
Was it the car?
Yes, it was.
Wow. So the mechanical device with the higher top speed beat the bewildered animal that didn't know what was going on.
Yeah. Literally the most pointless race in history.
Yeah, it was basically an exercise in not running over a cheetah.
Do you know, I was following a pigeon the other day.
You what? What, is this a new job? You opened an agency? Jeremy Clarkson, PD, pigeon detective. It's going to be brilliant. Did its partner think it was cheating? Follow him.
No, it was just following.
Well, every time it stopped, did you have to read a newspaper like that? And then look for its reflection in the shop window?
I was merely following it
And
up
anyway, you should have just gone to Trafalgar Square. That's where they go.
I was merely driving up my drive, and a pigeon was flying along in front of me. And I clocked it, and it was doing 35 miles an hour.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, that's another animal that would lose a race against a Formula E car, then. Yes. That's 140.
They should race it
It had
immediately.
nothing to do with running a private detective agency.
But you are running a private detective.
I was simply following a pigeon. It wasn't that interesting anyway. The essence of it is...
Did you follow it into a tree? Because that would have been really risky, wouldn't it? No, the essence of it is, so if your animal does less than 140 miles an hour, it will lose the race against the Formula E car. If it does more than 100... Well, no animal does more than 140, does it?
It does. Peregrine Falcon does.
God,
Does
what if
220.
What if you have to follow one of those? I can't take the case, I'm afraid. I'll need a new car.
Lamborghini has come up with a new 4x4. We've got a picture of it here. Amazing looking thing. Actually, make no mistake about that. Twin turbo V8, which will be in 641 horsepower. The only problem is they've called it the Urus, U-R-U-S, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds to me like another word for bumhole.
No, I mean, it's a bit medical
It is. How's your Urus? It's a bit itchy, actually.
Yeah. Mine's inflamed, I can't pee. It's one of those things.
Yeah, it's something
down there.
Exactly, down there. Sort of thing when you go to the doctor, he's, I'm going to check your Urus, and then he puts a glove on.
No.
Oh, he's snapping a glove on. I don't want that. Anyway, so if you want one of those, there it is. Oh, can I just talk about the Ford F-150 pickup truck, okay? Now, how many do you think they sell in America?
I know it's a lot.
A lot. It's 2,500 a day.
Get sold.
A day. That's new F-150s. And Ford has decided, amazingly, they'd like to sell more, so they're about to introduce a hybrid version.
Really?
Yes, a hybrid F-150 pickup truck.
I can't imagine that F-150 owners are very interested in a I don't think they know what it is, actually.
No, they wouldn't.
Do they?
You're dead right. They've actually done some research over there in America land, and it turns out that F-150 customers, when asked, list fuel consumption as the 28th most important thing in their buying consideration.
So the 27 things they'd think about first on a car.
27 more important things.
What things?
I can't think of 27 things on a car.
Well, hold on. Looks. Cup holders, definitely.
That's a good one.
Yes.
Power.
Price.
Size of the load bay thing at the back.
Yeah.
Weight.
What else is
Weight
more
it can
important? Come. What? Gun rack.
Yeah, that's
Come
right.
on, my gun. 6, definitely gun rack.
If they're saying the fuel consumption doesn't matter, which is what those owners are saying, isn't it? Why then are Ford making a hybrid at all? Why are they?
Well, no.
No, they've got to. It's because the environmental rules that Obama brought in. All the companies have to do a certain...
Yes,
But Ford are saying the batteries that are part of the hybrid system, OK, they're not some communist plot to come back fake news, global warming. That's to say, OK, it's got batteries in it, yes, but they are for charging up your mitre saw, cooling beer and running the coffee maker on a camping trip.
So the F-150 is a pickup for carrying a big battery to cool your beer.
And that, I think that is enough conversation for 1 week, don't you? So let's
More than.
move it on.
Yes.
Right, the new Ford GT. I used one recently in the race we had from New York to the Niagara Falls. And I'm not sure that on a freeway journey like that, I got the best out of it.
You chose the wrong car.
Not really.
No, he's right, you did. Well, the GT was designed as a racing car, as we know. In fact, it won the first time out at Le Mans, and therefore, as we know, using one on the street is stupid.
Yeah, so you're saying I should have tested it on a track?
Yes.
Good, because I have done. There are those who say that on a track, the Pretty Boy GT is better than anything made in Europe. That it's more exciting than all of its rivals from Lamborghini and McLaren and Ferrari.
Bye.
Well, before I can find out, I have to stop. Right, now we're stationary, I can put it in track mode, which will lower the car gently. Not that gently. It will engage the anti-lag system so the power is always available, raise the rear wing, and stiffen the suspension by 100%.
That is it.
Good. So, now let's see what's what. The first thing I can tell you is this is not as delicate as a Ferrari. Ferrari is balletic. This is more like pogo dancing to the Ramones. This is hard and brutal and unrefined. When you're in a Ferrari, it's like you're wrapped in silk. In this, it feels like you've fallen into a saw at a lumber yard.
And you are...
Don't think, however, that it's just a barroom brawler, all doors and no trousers. It is way more than that. impression that nothing in this has really been compromised to make it work elegantly on the road. This is a car for people who wear Nomex, not spandex. It's like the chassis made from pure telepathy. You can absolutely wring its neck, and it just keeps coming back for more. Why can't more cars feel like this?
Then there's the twin-turbocharged V6 engine.
Yes, the soundtrack is terrible. It just makes a noise. A lot of noise. All of the time.
And it only produces 647 horsepower, which in this day and age is a lot. But it's not a colossal lot.
You can't help thinking a thumping great V8 would have solved both these problems.
But they didn't want a thumping great V8 because they wanted the GT to be light. That's why it has a carbon fibre tub and an aluminium subframe. It's designed to be kept on the ground only by the weight coming from its aerodynamics.
If you take that weight out of the equation by putting the car in Helix mode, which locks the rear wing down, well, who cares it's only got a V6? Because the performance, it is blistering.
0 to 60 takes 2.8 seconds.
Right!
And the top speed is 260.
Embrace the shadow.
Of course, the GT is not perfect. The steering wheel is ugly and difficult to use. The fuel tank is too small, and the body is too big. And yet...
Ferraris and Lamborghinis and McLarens are very good cars. Make no mistake about that. But mostly, they're bought by posers. Now, this isn't for posing. It's too rough and too plasticky and too noisy for that. You buy one of these so you can go to a track on a miserable Monday morning when nobody's looking and do this.
And you've got to love it for that.
You know, the strange thing about that car is that I finished filming it, got into my car, went home, and I haven't really given the GT another thought since.
I think it's something to do with the fact it's got that V6, because V6 engines just aren't exciting. It's like they've got no personality.
Some are, but I'm with you a lot of the time.
I think it's right if they're turbocharged, especially, because then they don't rev. Yeah. That's what you want. You want that.
It could be that. It could be the interior as well, which is made from that really sort of feels like shiny plastic. Feels cheap and low rent, but whatever it is, it feels to me as though it hasn't really got a soul. But we must now find out how fast it goes round the Ebola-drome.
Right, here we go.
And she's off. Spoiler up. Suspension dropped in full track mode as she makes a confident start onto the isn't. Knocking it down a gear for the first curve to keep those turbos spinning, and already looking on the raggedy edge. She's really not mucking about here as she flies into your name here. There's a howl from the bespoke Michelins there. Now, oh yeah, look at that smooth arc. Round your name here and then lighting the afterburners for the fast run back down the isn't. Not what you'd call a soulful sound, as we've said, but there's no doubting the sheer speed of this thing. Okay, into old lady's house, taking it steady through there. Easy does it. And now back on the gas for what'll be a bumpy ride down to substation. Hard on the mighty carbon brakes. Neat through there. This is a Le Mans winning performance through Field of Sheep and across the line. Looked unbelievably quick. You see it?
Yeah, skittering there.
It was properly, she must have been properly hanging on in there. Anyway, we must now find out where it goes on the board. Let's have a look. I imagine...
Victory for Sylvanus.
What is your reply?
176.
A second or so slower than the Lamborghini, which is a price.
Yeah, but I think what that shows is not that the Ford is slow, because it just isn't. I mean, it's quicker than McLaren 720. What that shows actually is just how fast that Huracan is.
No, it's exactly, that's blistering.
Absolutely blistering. Unbelievable car, that. Anyway, it's now time for Celebrity Face-Off. And once again, we have a very big question, and it is this. Who is the fastest drummer from a band beginning with the letter P? To find out, would you please welcome from the Police, Stuart Copeland, and from Pink Floyd, Nick Mason! Look at this. We are in the presence of greatness. Gentlemen, Nick.
What is it?
Have a seat, Stuart.
Beware.
Oh, now look at that! We are not messing around tonight. Genuine rock gods have come among us. You are both regarded as particularly excellent drummers.
Well, by each other, yeah.
And the one thing I see that you have in common is your favourite drummer is the same person.
Yeah, Mitch Mitchell, we worked this out last night. We've sorted out the hierarchy last
That's
night.
exactly right. And I knew we were really on it because the table next door were beginning to eavesdrop. Yeah. And after 5 minutes, they'd both actually gone to sleep.
That's right. Yeah, so we lost them. Yeah. We lost them by the
you
main
both
chorus.
agree that Mitch Mitchell was your favourite drummer?
Yeah, our favourite.
Of all time. This was Jimi Hendrix's drummer. I think we should explain to those of you who are not as old as, let's say, we are.
Well, that's the travesty right there. This great towering, this monument of drums was Jimi Hendrix's drummer.
Well, how would you describe it?
Well, Jimmy was Mitch's guitarist.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
One of the things that fascinates me is, why are drummers always the butt of everybody's wit? Well, when I say wit,
well,
I mean
it's because they secretly admire our dragging knuckles. They sense our power.
But there are so many good jokes, right? What does a drummer get on an IQ test? Drool. Yeah, drool.
Hey. What do you throw a drowning guitarist? His amp.
How do you know it's the lead guitarist at the front door? Got the wrong key, doesn't know when to come in.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So we like the guitarist joke.
Yeah. Got any more jokes? By the way, since we are the gnarliest members of the band, for 2 hours we chop wood for a living, and they're prissy little fiddly people in the front of the stage.
You're giving it, yes, it's hard work as well.
They tell these jokes, and we just take it.
We do.
Because that's how great we are.
You have a rule as well, if you make a mistake with drumming, which I particularly enjoy.
The suggestion is, if you do make a mistake, look angrily at the bass player.
What the hell are you doing? Let's move on to gigs. You both presumably played really big ones over the years. What's been your biggest, you reckon?
Well, we've been comparing notes, but, you know, you played a stadium, and, you know,
we sell out.
A stadium, you sell a stadium's a stadium.
But I think he still got me. We all played the Stade de France. I played it twice, 2 nights running. He played it 3 times running. Okay, he beat me on this one, and then he beat me on that one, and then, because he came before me. This is the way musicians establish the hierarchy.
As a drummer, they always come
It's
first.
chronology. Manfred Mann outranks me because he came before, but Kanye is my bitch.
Now, I've got a question here from Richard Hammond.
Oh, God.
No.
Where is he? Where is he?
Richard Hammond is there. He's
there
in the audience. He's a big fan of One Direction.
What?
And his question is, how do you old dinosaurs feel now that music's got so good?
I didn't say that!
did not say that.
I did say that.
He didn't say that. Oh, why would he say that?
I think I'll let Mr. Mason handle this one.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to go on record as saying that fairly recently, I was on a show, I was promoting something, probably double glazing, and I was with Harry Styles was on as well, and I did offer to play drums for him, because I'm really looking for work. I mean...
Anyway, look, we've got to get on to... No, actually, no, we haven't. No, not yet. Because I want to talk about fathers. Because your father was...
A wonderful man.
And a CIA spy.
That too.
Nobody actually...
No, he was a great father, and he was a jazz musician. That's why I knew him. And he was, before the war, he played jazz, and I still got his trumpet. He was a session player. Then the Great War broke out, and he joined the army and got into intelligence. And he shaped the modern Middle East as it was up until 9/11. Everything that happened after 9/11 is not my dad's fault.
No. But it was because he was very instrumental in Nasser in Egypt, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, when I was born, Daddy was away on business in Cairo installing Gamal Abdel Nasser as the dictator of Egypt.
Did you know your dad was CIA?
I didn't know till I was in college, and his book came out, and on the liner notes of the book.
Okay, but when did he stop being a spy?
Well, certainly after he'd written the book.
Yeah. And your father, we can turn to that. Now, he was a documentary maker, but mostly a motor racing enthusiast.
Yeah.
Which has rubbed off on you.
Just a bit.
This is where I'm afraid we have to tune you out slightly, Stuart, for a little while. Because next car collection is...
Well, this is a car show.
It is a car show.
Not a Spy Daddy show.
I thought it was a sort of...
How many cars have you got?
I don't know. 40?
40. I've got a list here of some of them. Because we're not talking now about, cars like a Ford Cortina. Because you've got Alfa Romeo TZ1, Aston Martin Ulster, 1930 Bentley 4.5 litre, Bugatti Type 35, Ferrari 250 GTO, Ferrari 250 LM, Ferrari 512 Berlinetta Boxer, Ferrari Daytona Competition, Ferrari F40, Model T Ford, Jaguar D-Type, Maserati 250F, Maserati Birdcage, McLaren GTR. It's a remarkable collection. Which is your favourite?
It always has to be the 250 GTO. Because it makes me look clever. When I bought this car 40 years ago...
May I just ask, it's a rude question, I know, but how much did you pay for the GTO?
I paid about 35 grand for it.
35,000. And it's now worth...
don't tell me.
30 million.
No, more than that.
Where are all these cars?
Oh, God. I've left them on the meter.
You got like a garage from hell?
And these are largely racing cars. It's racing that interests you more than...
Yeah. I never wanted to be a car collector. I wanted to go motor racing.
And you do actually use them?
Yes.
And lend them out?
Not often, but occasionally, yeah.
You lend them to your family?
Yes.
Who'd like to see a photograph of what your daughter did to her? There she is.
That's your little girl.
It's known as the cupcake.
Gloves and the helmet and the look.
I like the way she's
go
still
great
trying...
in the pink cupcake. I mean,
she's trying to steer it
if
still.
you sort of look on the side, it all looks...
She hasn't given up. That's what I really... I'm so I can get this back. Right, come on then, Stuart. Let's get to your cars. It starts with a... It's not quite as impressive as Nick's, is it?
A Morris Traveller.
There you go.
I got it for 40 quid from a gypsy. And I spent most of the time under it.
But that was when you were in the UK?
Yeah. And I had a Millman Minx for a very short amount of time.
A Minx?
A Millman Hinx. Met its end in Hammersmith.
No, how?
Well, I was pulling around Hammersmith, and the articulated lorry came in front of me.
Be quick about your business.
So I slowed down, and the back of the truck ran over and squashed my Hillman Minx like a bug right there in Hammersmith. And as I'm looking at the smoldering remains of my car, a cop comes up and gave me a ticket for bald tires.
It's cruel. Anyway, look, we've got to get on to your laps. Now, whose laps shall we see first? Let me think. I think we should start with, well, let's be honest, let's start with the older gentleman.
The pro.
The older statesman, the pro. OK, who'd like to see Nick's lap? Yeah. Come on, then, let's have a look.
Do not.
That's how you do it.
Okay, launch control.
And, oh, look at that for a
look at
tidy line. This is a man who's done racing before, holding it nicely there. And onto the ground.
Very nice, very nice. Look at that.
No, no brake lights. Oh, but there should have been perhaps, because that's quite wide. And there we are. So quick at the beginning, slow now. Typical drummer.
Out the drift.
Oh, look at that. It's nicely done, Nick.
Nice.
And into difficult bit 2. You're just kissing those lines so neatly.
That bodes well.
No, it does, because, you know, it doesn't look particularly fast, but I can just see... So, look, that's really skinny, that bit.
Well, the gravel's insane.
Yeah, no, the gravel's insane, but it's when you get back on the tarmac, you think, oh, that was wide. Right, now into the fast bit.
Whoa!
Yeah, it is that fast. It is quite scary through here.
Power.
That is tidily done. Did he lift? And there we are, he is across the line. So that's good, you're there. Did you lift off on the fast bit?
By the end of it, I did it flat.
You have to do it flat. Oh, okay then. Who'd like to see Stuart's lap? Let's have a look at Stuart's lap. Yep, tidy start.
Hallelujah! Toronto!
Are we as tidy as Nick? No, we're just cheating.
Off the course.
No, that was nice through there. Now I like to slow it. Yes, that's good. Keep it on the right, ready for the left, and onto the difficult bit. When it starts to just snake around on
This
you.
is insane. This gravel is just completely insane.
No, I can tell you're really enjoying the gravel.
Hey, the dirt! The dirt sucks!
No, I may have got that wrong. But this bit, right, yes, nicely done. You're a lot more violent, I'd say, than Nick here. A lot more. Yeah, look at that. So kicking the tail out, kicking the tail out
there
again. Soon you'll be back, though, on...
Bit of a weave on that there.
Tarmac, yeah.
Must be said.
I approve of the...
Oh, it's looking really dramatic.
It is dramatic. It's a lot more dramatic looking than Nick's lap, but...
Let's go!
This is a man on a mission. Oh, Christ. That is quick through there, I've got to be honest. It's nicely held.
Stay on course here. Okay, this is the big turn. You make
big
it?
turn, and you've made it. There we are. He's made it back all the way across the line. Who shall we do first? I think we're going to go with Steady Eddie here, Nick Mason. 121.3. Well, you don't know. You're pulling a face, but you don't know what anyone else did. But yeah, you are at 121.3. Just to give you an idea, that puts you at exactly the same time as Luke Evans, who's in Fast and the Furious. Quicker than Hugh Bonneville, quicker than Michael Ball, quicker than David Hasselhoff.
Whoa. That's some shit.
Stuart Copeland. You looked faster.
Felt faster.
Felt faster. But you did it in 124.2. So...
I made it around the course.
You made it around the course,
Most
but
of me is
I
about.
don't think we've had anyone slower. No, I'm lying. Bill Bailey, a well-known comedian
Bill,
here.
You
Bill,
my bitch.
Bill Bailey and Alfie Bow, they're